So for the filter, all you really need is something like this, okay, where you're filtering on one column. And to do this requires changing the code behind and also changing the view. So in the view, you'll notice that I put this below create and above the table. I added a form, and the only thing that the form has in it is the input for the search string. Okay, and I'm going to search on title because that made sense in this particular app. Now, when you add this, it's going to flag search string until you add that to the code behind. So in the code behind, when you first come in here, all you're going to have is this. And that basically is the list of resources. In this example, it's the list of movies. It's basically everything from your database. Okay, and then below that, you do need to add the search string. So I added the bind property and the search string. Okay, because it's going to be retrieving that string from my page. It's not going to be retrieving that from the database, it's getting it from the view. Then we do need to do a little modification down here in on get async. So we need to, first of all, create a object that's going to be storing everything from the database. And that is what this does. This is a LINQ query where it's basically retrieving everything from the database and storing it. Then we're checking to see if the search string has something in it. If it's not null or empty, then this is the variable storing everything. We take that and we filter it with a where clause. And we only keep the data that has the title that was in the search string. That's what gets stored. And then this is where it gets passed to the view. So this statement ends up changing from what you had. Prior to this, none of this was in here, and all you had was this type of statement, but it looked a little bit different. So if we take a look at Jane's, at her code behind, you can see this is what it initially looked like. Okay, but now we're passing it our filtered data. Okay, so that has to change a little bit. Okay, so we're passing it resources. Now, if there's nothing in the string, it's still going to send it everything. Okay, but we've changed this so that we are using this object here instead of what we had before. Okay, so those changes will give you the ability to do filtering. Now, this tutorial actually takes it a step further, and they allow you to filter based on a drop-down list. So I do have that in my other example. Okay, I'm not going to add it to this one because it really doesn't make sense, and I'm pretty happy with how this looks when I run it. Okay, so I'm filtering on title. So I can actually do any part of the title. Or I can just remove that and I get everything back. So I will show you the other example. Don't think I have it. Oh, I do have it running. So for this will filter on the title, but it also has this drop down that will also filter. Oops, I don't think I have it running in the background. I will have to pull that up for you and show you that one because there is another piece to this that you can do. So hold on a second. All right, so in this one, I still have the ability to do the filter on the title. But I've also got a drop-down list that can also serve as a filter. And so basically in this drop-down list, the only thing that I have an option for is all. Everything else is actually being generated by, in this case, it's the genres that have been added to the table. Okay, so this is a select for movie genre and the items it is getting from the model. And so that's where all of the other items in the dropdown are coming from. So this gets added into the HTML page, the master page. Then over in the code behind, so this one is for movies, but you can see that it's got all of the lists for the movies. It's got the search string, and then it's got a select list for genres. And it's also got a movie genre string. Okay, so the select list for the genres is what gets sent to the view, and that is what the view is using to create the dropdown from. Okay, and then this movie genre is kind of like the search string, right? That's what we're going to filter on. So this also has sorting, so we're just going to kind of ignore that for a moment and look at the filtering. So the filtering for this, here is where it's retrieving all of the movies. Okay, and here is where it's checking for the search string, which has the title filter. Okay, that's the same as what we were just looking at. Here is where it is checking for the movie genre. Okay, so it is checking to see if this has been filled in. And so it's checking movie genre. That's what we have here. Okay. So that's how it's kind of connecting, right? Is movie genre empty? If it's not empty, then we are going to do a filter on genre. Okay, so we're using the where clause here, and it's only going to display the rows from the table that have the genre that was selected. Okay, this is for sorting. We're not going to look at that yet. Down here, this select list, okay, you'll see it's doing a query on genre. It's only going to retrieve and store distinct entries, which is obviously what we want in a dropdown, right? We don't want like 50 romantic comedies to show up. We only want one. So this is building that list that is getting passed over here and displayed. Okay, it's using those genres from that list in the code behind to generate this list of options. Okay, so that's what that line is for. And then down here, this is the filtered list of movies that is getting sent to the view. And if there wasn't a search string and there wasn't a genre selected, it's all of the movies. Okay, so that's how it works in here. And that's what this tutorial is kind of walking you through. Okay, so for the intents and purposes of our project, do you need to have a drop down and a search box? No, you can do one or the other. If you want to do both, awesome. Okay. That brings me to sorting. For the sorting, there is a couple different ways you can do it. The way that I did it in this project, and I don't think that it is in this tutorial. So the way that I did it in this particular project is I have basically two links. Okay, they're anchor tags that I have styled to look like buttons. And they're going to end up routing back to the index page. Okay, so that's what ASP page does. It's a helper. And when they click on it, it's going to route back to the index, which is my master page. Okay, but when it routes back to the master, in the route, which is the URL, it's either going to have descending or ascending. So let me run this and show you how that works. Okay, so here's this particular project. Ignore the file uploads. I don't have that fully working yet. So here is the movies. And as I said, you can, go by filter by genre. You can type in a title. Here's the sort. So if I click on these, watch the URL. Okay, so it says sort descending. Sort ascending. That's really important because the code behind has to know what button was selected. Okay, and the way we're telling it what button is selected is we are putting it up in the route. And then it knows the sort order that it needs to use. Okay, so here in the index page, we're telling it either descending or ascending. Okay. Then in our code behind, you'll see that I only added one thing here for the sort, and it's called title sort. When you have something that's in the route, it's in the URL, in your method, you can add a parameter for that. So that sort order of either ascending or descending, depending on what they pick. Okay, the sort order, which is this, okay, is going to come in as a parameter. Okay, so that is this parameter. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm storing it. Okay. And this genre query is basically for the genre information that we pass along for the filter. This is now for the filter and for the sort. It's for both. Okay. Genre is only for that drop down. If you're not going to do a drop down, you don't need to have anything like that. Okay. So looking at this, we've got the title sort, either ascending or descending stored. And down here is where we check it. So this is the code you have to add. You have to add this. You have to add this to pull it in. You got to store it. And then you have to check to see what it is. So either it's going to be descending or ascending. So I'm checking to see if it is descending. If it is, then I take all of the movies and I order by descending based on title. So this sorts it in descending order. This is a link query. Otherwise, I use order by, and that is ascending. So the default is basically ascending. Okay, and then I can use those two buttons to change the sort order. Now, the way that this is set up is the filtering and sorting are mutually exclusive. So if I filter, they're not necessarily going to be sorted. And if I choose to sort, that goes back to my full list. Okay, so these are not cumulative, they're two separate features. Okay, so that is how I handled sorting in here. I went ahead and added a sort to the current example. And so instead of having buttons, how I did it was I did it by, you can click on a column. And at this point, I only have one column, but I could easily add others. So how did I do that? In the view, I basically converted the column heading into a link. Okay, so it's going to go back to the index, and you see that I have the sort order in the route again, and it's pulling a value from the code behind. So let's take a look at the code behind. So in the code behind, I had to add a variable for the title sort. And because the sort order is going to be in the route, I'm pulling in the parameter. And here I've got a little if statement. It's kind of a if shortcut where I'm checking to see if the string is null or empty, if the sort order string is null or empty. And if it is, then I am going to set descending. Otherwise, I'm going to set it to empty. So how this works down here in the if else is if it's descending, it does order by descending. If it's empty, it does order by, which is ascending order. Okay, so basically the first time this is displayed, it's going to be ascending order. And then the only way it's going to go to descending is if they click on that column heading. So it's just going to flip back and forth between ascending and descending. And so I can basically set this up for multiple columns if I want to. So I have a title sort. So let's say I wanted to do a type sort, because that might make sense. Okay, so it's still going to be passing the sort order. That's fine. So now I have type sort equals. This is going to be very similar, actually almost identical. If I set it up to start with ascending and then switch to descending. So now that I have more than one, I may want to do a switch here. That actually may make more sense. And I might want to use a little different descriptors here, such as title, descending, type, descending, and type ascending. And then blank is going to be the default. So I can do a little switch on my sort order. And I'm going to pause while I code this up. All right, so I have coded it so that now it will sort by type or title. So I had to add type up here. I had to do another if, basically setting type sort to either type descending or type ascending. Title sort is still title descending or blank. And then in the switch, I'm checking the sort order to see which one of these it is. And if it's blank, then it's going to go ascending by title. So how does this connect to the view? So in the view, I have the route set to the title sort or the type sort. So it is pulling those values that are set here and using them over in the view. Okay, and this if is kind of nifty because, so let's say I sort by type. Okay. Go title, type. Now it's working. Let me run this again. Seems to be getting confused. So there is a little modification we have to make for a 2-column sort. So to type sort, I do need to see if the sort order is equal to type ascending, because it's getting stuck on that. That is what I need to check. Oh. And that should be 1 equal. So the first one handles no sort order. The second one, if the sort order is type ascending, it'll switch it over to descending. Okay, and if it isn't type ascending, okay, then it'll change it to type ascending. So it's going to be one or the other. That should make it so it works, because the problem that I was seeing is it was stuck on type ascending. So let me run this. Oh, or reload it here. So when it first loads, nothing has been selected. So it is going to go in title order and ascending order. So if I click on type, you can see it's filling it in up here, type ascending. Okay, now if I do it again, type descending. Back to type ascending. So now it's working. Before it just kind of got stuck. And now here, it's nothing because it's back to ascending. And now it's descending. And I should be able to go back to type and change the sort order. And now it is all working. Okay, so these are connected by setting these variables, and then over in the view, it's using those variables in the route. So it's putting them up in the route, and then the code behind is pulling them from the route. And so if the current order is descending, it flips it over to ascending. Okay, that's kind of how it works. So that is sorting, and there's 2 different ways you guys can do it. Both of them involve links. So all I did in this project, which I will put on GitHub for you, what I did in here is I made the links in the headings. What I did in the other project is I have separate buttons that I made the links. Okay, so you guys can do it whatever way you want, but that is basically what you have to do for this sprint, and you will need to have those two things done. And so when you demo, you are going to need to be able to go to your master page, which is your index. You'll have to be able to do a filter. Oops. Okay, and then your sorting will have to work. And you don't have to make the filter persist. So when it sorts, it can go back to your full list. And you only have to sort on one column. You do not need to do a 2-column sort unless you want to. Then you also need to be able to display the details. And I would style this. This is very boring. So that should be styled. And in my other example, you can see that I set it up a little bit different, but it still has the same functionality. And the details is styled.